Welcome to a Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Vacca, and I'm happy to welcome Steve Schleupner to the podcast today. We're going to be discussing what you should be thinking about if you jointly own a business with your spouse and if you're considering divorce or in the middle of a divorce. And welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Well, thanks for having me, Andrea.
Yeah, I thought you'd be the perfect person for this discussion because while I know you're currently a divorce transition specialist and you have decades really of financial planning and life coaching experience. Before you got into that, you were helping business owners handle succession planning and risk management. And now you combine all of that expertise and knowledge to help couples move through divorce and make sure that what they're doing financially aligns with their long-term goals. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In divorce, when a business divorces, it's really a succession plan.
Right.
And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. Separating it from the divorce sometimes is the way to go. So what is, from your financial perspective, what do you think makes business ownership the most challenging, or what are the challenging issues in business ownership and divorce? I guess that's the better
Yeah.
question.
There are plenty of challenging issues. I would say the two main challenges are, first off, when you go through divorce, the courts establish through civil procedure the timeline. In other words, they establish the pace of divorce. So if you're going into divorce as a business owner, that timeline can stress you. You don't have enough time to prepare and even preempt risk from occurring. The other thing that happens is a lot of times there's these nuances in the business. There's these risk areas that the owner is very familiar with that they're trying to work around. And if these risk areas come alive, it could affect their future revenue. So they realize that the divorce is going to be based on the value of the business today, but they're looking down the road and saying, well, you don't understand that this risk has happened systemically in the system. It's going to affect my revenue 2-3 years from now. I can't afford to pay what you're asking me to pay. So those are the main problems. The other things that happen is oftentimes divorce or business equity isn't treated as a tax deferred asset like a 401k is. They don't realize that when you liquidate a business, because every business will turn into cash, when you liquidate a business, your choices of getting paid out is either through a lump sum payment or an installment note, and both of those are taxed differently. So oftentimes that tax treatment isn't built in the right way. I would say other things that come in, there's always an impact to the business's bottom line. And when a business experiences an unexpected divorce impact, now they're looking at making key decisions that affect employees. So now your divorce is rippling out to other households that you didn't intend for it to do. So I think it's important to encapsulate a lot of these factors. But I mean, there's a long laundry list of issues that can come up, and I don't want to take up the whole half hour or whatever answering this one question.
Challenges that were, that you can mention, and they all have like subcategories, obviously. But most often in divorce, if there's a business owned, it's usually one party. That's the most typical situation. One party owns a business. But more and more often, we are helping couples, and I don't know if you're seeing this too, but we're helping couples divorce who jointly own and operate a business. And that's what I'd really like to talk about today, because I think it's more common. And what we're hearing, at least here, is we want to keep owning this business together. That's even more common lately. So what options do you say couples have when they jointly own a business and they're ending their marriage?
Right.
What's coming up at that point?
Well, this is a great question, and it's a very fun dynamic to work with. I know it's not fun for the couple, but for someone like myself, it allows us to be really creative.
Yeah.
So you take a business where, I'll give you an example. I had a, a married couple. They owned a restaurant. They wanted to liquidate their restaurant. They wanted to liquidate their commercial property that was all encompassed in one type of business entity, and they wanted a high price for it, but they hadn't prepared for all of these things. And when their divorce came, they immediately hired lawyers. It wasn't until their divorce got really contentious that they stepped back and said, maybe we need to preempt and plan for some of the risk. So the first thing that you realize when you're working with a married couple is they have shared sweat equity, and they've had shared stress. If you ask them, and if I bring a couple in, and oftentimes, and we're talking about their business, I'll bring these important points in time to the forefront where we say, what was the biggest challenge that you two overcame when you started this business? Like, get them talking about the business, because all that shared stress, equity, passion comes alive. And what it does is this is a great motivator to help them co-create something that's in both of their best interest. But if they come into the framework of these discussions as, so and so did this to me in the relationship, and they're doing this to me in the business, and they're not taking 100% responsibility for their role, then that will be the energy that flows through the divorce process. So you have to bring to life some of the story of the business. Business owners love to talk about their story. Once their story comes up and their motivation is brings this awareness where they say, you're right. We have too much invested. We need to get fair payout. We need to have a fair transition for this work. Then they're more apt to co-create with you on the solutions.
Yeah, they realize it sounds like they're really tapping into their story. They have their marriage story, they have their business story. But if they want the
Mhm,
business to continue, they know they have to maybe it'll inspire them on how they worked well together, look at their strengths, what did they do well, how did they achieve it, and then see how they can move it forward.
mhm,
Um, and then if and then what kind of options are you working with them on? Are you at that point, are you
mhm.
talking about co-owning it together, one person doing a buyout, or whether it gets sold? Is that like where you now where you go next?
Yeah, I think the first question is this. So whenever you own a business and one of the major owners who's playing a vital role in that business leaves, maybe it's retirement, maybe they got disabled, maybe someone passed away, or if you're married, maybe it's your partner that you're divorcing. Well, that person played a vital role and they brought so much top line revenue to the business. So if you're going through divorce and you're thinking about just having one of you keep the business, you have to equate for the fact that you have to hire somebody else to pick up that work. So now you have additional risk of paying somebody else through payroll to fulfill a job, training them on that job, right? Maybe even working around diminished customer relations that that person's had while you're paying out your spouse. So the first question I would ask is, if you're thinking about buying out your spouse from the business, you have to know that you're willing to take 100% of the risk, 100% of the effort to end up with 50% of the business equity. If the answer to that is yes, then they can work their contingency plans and start that process. They know the business better than we do. But if the answer to that is no, then they need to have a serious conversation on whether they sell the business or they work a strategy for continued shared ownership.
When somebody is, how often are you when you're giving these kind of options, when somebody's saying, "Well, I still wanna go forward, take that risk, even though it's 50% of the profit or or equity," is it because they already had something in mind, like somebody else, I already have another partner stepping in, or is it because they've been planning this? Like, that sounds like a huge risk. So
Yeah.
what do you hear is usually has would lead someone to take that on? Are there any
Well,
commonalities?
well, for the first thing is they both love the business, or one person really loves the business, and they might have been working in the business for so long that they can't see themselves doing another job, or they
Oh,
can't even see themselves making as much money, right? So
okay.
that's a big transitional change to work for yourself for a number of years and then fall into alignment of working under another person. That's a whole different transitional change where your identity is impacted. Oftentimes what will happen in some of these relationships is the business, especially since we came out of COVID, I've seen businesses that experience severe stress, and then the marriage started experiencing severe stress, and one of the owners, one of the married couples, just really burnt out, and the
Oh,
other married couple wanted to keep driving forward, and this burnout was pushing the one owner out of the business. So I would say the thing that keeps them centered in the business is that it's their livelihood, it's what they're
mm,
familiar with. You know, as humans, we're programmed for certainty. We want to seek certainty all through our life, and if you've had a successful business, then you look at that business for certainty without looking at a comprehensive, what we would call a SWOT analysis, to really assess the whole paradigm that's working under the new arrangement.
right. It could be very emotional.
Hmm.
I put so much into this. I want to keep it going. It's my baby. I kept it going through COVID or whatever the case may be, and I can't see myself doing anything else. So I will take this risk.
Hmm.
So, what about situation, and that this is where we've seen more of this, is where the couple wants to continue owning it. They don't want the marriage anymore, but they want to continue owning a business together. So my first step is to say you need an operating agreement, because you probably didn't have one during your marriage. It was just the two of you as owners. If there's a third owner, perhaps you had an operating agreement, but if it's just the two, there wasn't, and you just did things the way you did things. That's not going to fly anymore. So,
Hmm.
what do you tell people when they come to when the choice they want to make is, how do we keep running this business? What do they
Yeah,
need to think about?
yeah. There's this is a great question. This is where there's a lot of opportunity, but the business owner has to be willing to stretch their mindset. They have to be willing to do it. So the first thing I would say, and this is with all divorces, divorce is a life transition. It's not a transaction. So
Mm,
when you're going through divorce, it's very easy to look at the divorce as a transaction around settling kids and finances, but it's a life transition. Now, when you encapsulate that into the world of a business, now you're talking about a more in-depth transition. So the first piece of advice I would say is you have to invest in the transition. So instead of wasting money, or what I call avoidable costs, on arguments around the transaction, recover that money and put it to work for you in a good way. Maybe like hiring a business coach that will help you not only expand on that operating agreement, but identify clear roles and responsibilities for each of you, and how you'll measure yourself, and who can be your accountability partner through that until you get solidified. What can you do to cross train your staff so that you have more time to work on your business rather than in your business? Because up to this point, the business owner, it's very common for a business owner to spend all their time mopping up the puddle each day, just trying to get the business through its operations. But when you go through this type of transition, what it presents for you is a huge opportunity to look at all these fissures that were flowing in that you can now plug and improve your business. Now, in order to do this beyond the business coach, you have to be willing to raise your relationship bar beyond what it was. Because if you don't do that, then your success as newly formed business partners will only be as high as the bar that you set during your marriage. So there are ways for you to raise this relationship bar, to improve communication, to let the divorce issues in the relationship, issues, stay at the doorstep of divorce, right? Don't bring it forward. That's what divorce gives us the permission to do. It gives us a permission because we've asked for it to say, everything I didn't like about the relationship, I can leave it in a backpack at the doorstep. I don't have to bring it forward.
Right.
I'm free. I don't have permission to bring this stuff in. So don't bring it in.
Love that. Hey, listeners, it's Andrea Vacca here, your host of a Better Divorce podcast. If you're looking for ways to navigate your divorce with less conflict and more cooperation, my free ebook, Divorce Without Court, A More Peaceful Solution, can help you do just that. Divorce Without Court shows you how to reach an agreement without court involvement, from understanding mediation and collaborative divorce to learning how to keep your divorce under your control. This book covers it all. You'll even find practical checklists and first steps to help you move forward and guide you through the process. With over 3 decades of experience in family law, I've helped countless couples and families achieve peaceful solutions. Divorce Without Court puts that knowledge in your hands. Whether you're just starting to think about ending your marriage or if you're already in the process, this free ebook will help you have a better divorce. Why wait? Click the link in the episode description to download Divorce Without Court, A More Peaceful Solution. Take control of your future and move forward in your divorce with confidence and composure. All right, Steve. So let's talk about how do you raise that relationship bar when you're in the middle of a divorce? You're arguing maybe about the kids. There's a lot of fear, a lot of emotions going on. How do you help couples pivot, focus on the business and what they need to do, pull up their big boy and girl pants, right? And be the business owners that they need to be, and
Right.
look at the future. What do they do?
So, so this is a process of working individually with each person. So oftentimes when you ask a couple, you know, why is your relationship falling apart? They will point the finger and say, well, it's 40% her fault, 60% my fault. The first thing to understand is you are 100% responsible for the role that you played in your relationship, and you're able to respond going forward from your best self 100% of the time. If you hold possibility for that, then that's important to do. The other thing is to ask yourself, if you cannot say that the divorce is okay, which means that you realize that the relationship just isn't working, it's no more complex than that. It's just not working. If you can't say at the doorstep of divorce that divorce is okay, then you need to pause. And this goes for business owners or everybody else, in my view. You need to pause because there's the answer to why you can't say it's okay will drag with you, not only through the divorce process, it will drag with you after the divorce decree is final. Then if they're able to get past this point, I'd like to walk them through an aspiration setting exercise. And an aspiration setting exercise is a coaching exercise that's a fast forward into the future. So an example would be you're running your business 5 years from now, and you're celebrating your retirement. Your kids are coming to your retirement. Your employees are there. What do you want that day to be like? How do you want to feel that day standing next to your ex-spouse? How do you want to celebrate your success? When you give up to give a toast to everybody that helped you there, what are you going to say? What do you want to say? So we can fast forward into the aspiration. We're getting out of the mind junk from our head that tells us what we can do now or what's only possible to what's in our heart to what we really want. Once you have that aspiration set by each party, then you can work backwards and have a session to just compare the aspiration to say how similar it is. And more often than not, people are operating under the same types of aspirations with little nuances and difference. They're operating under the same type of aspirations, but they're just poor at communicating it. So once you can get the aspiration set and understand how it's shared, now you have a foundation not only to transition through your divorce process, but you have a foundation that you can then plug a measuring stick in to any decision that you're making in the future. Is this decision taking us towards our aspiration or pulling us from our aspiration?
Right.
But what happens is most people go through this process and they haven't done that type of clarity work, and they don't have a foundation, so they can end up in circular arguments very easy because there's nothing that breaks it. There's no one that can come in and say, this is what we're doing is pulling us away from what we want.
This is so important for anyone listening to think about, that it's not just about keeping the business going so that it can provide you with financial security that you have, or give you the, meet your desires for how you want to work and what you want to do in the world. But that will not be enough to make this successful. This idea of focusing on the future and an aspirational goal and seeing where those align, and having that to pull you forward instead of, the divorce, and all the fear pushing you forward. You're kind of pulling, I guess, is that the right way to put it? You can see the light that you wanna achieve, right? So you're
Right.
going towards something instead of running from something. That's what I was trying to say.
Exactly. So every challenge in life presents us an opportunity. And we don't experience personal growth on the good days. I don't win the lottery today and say, now I have personal growth. Personal growth happens when we're challenged the most. So
Right.
if you look at it from that framework, behind your divorce, there is an opportunity for a miracle. And it's not a miracle is shifting from chaos to peace. Now, you might have been going through as married business owners with a lot of chaos because you felt overwhelmed. But when you can agree that you want to move forward, now you're opening up your blinders and you're saying, how can I? When you can get your mind into the how can I or how can we question, now you're in creative mode working around the challenge. So oftentimes when you're planning around this new transition under this new dynamic as not married business partners, but as business partners, you can be more smart. You can allow the divorce to teach you how to grow.
Mm.
And all the things that you're struggling with, all those things that you resist is just the doorway for you to enter and find it.
This reminds me of, I just came back from a trip. I was in France, in Paris, and there's a store called Merci, and I bought this eraser, and it says "Merci for my mistakes."
Mhm,
This giant eraser, like 3, 4 inches long, and I love it because that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And if you can look back, merci for my, thank you for the mistakes we made in the business, that we might not have done this
yeah,
so well. How can we shift, and think about how that can overflow to how can we parent better? Learning from your mistakes, like having that mindset will go
mhm.
so far in all areas
I,
as
I think
co-parents, co-owners, whatever it may be.
I think if you polled most divorcees, 5, 10 years after their divorce, the first thing they're going to say is that, you know what, it was the best thing, right? Their life has transformed in a way they realize it was the best thing. And if you ask them what they would change next, they're going to have something that came up. So, like in my personal divorce, my ex-wife and I went through a kitchen table divorce. And me being the financial planner, I approached my divorce from from a financial planning lens,
Mm,
right? Knew how to split the money, knew all of this. What I failed to realize is the support we needed to be more effective co-parents, and that was something that I never picked up as I was trying to manage the divorce based on my view of what needed to be done. So when I talk about supporting the transition, if you can surround yourself as you would with your child who was going through some sort of struggle at school, like most parents will step in and surround them with a support network. If you can surround yourself with the right support network, then you can transition through anything. But you need people to show you where these opportunities exist. Otherwise, you're going to sit back to 5 to 10 years from now and say, yeah, it was the right decision, but I could have done this differently. Had I just known this, it would have been better.
and we talk so often on this show and wherever I talk about divorce, about the importance of the team and that support system. And, somebody like you, who has the financial expertise and the coaching expertise, would is just such an essential part of a divorce process. It's not just about money; it's about finances, about the children. I mean, about the emotions, the children, and the legal issues. And that's why perhaps just your attorney or even your CPA is not the best person to tell you how to transition your business. You need outside guidance like this. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
glad we're talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I just wanted to touch on before we end is what happens when so many of these businesses are just supporting a lifestyle, the family's lifestyle. I have had clients that pay everything through the business, and um, so when you're just like guidance, what do you do when couples have been doing that? Now they have two different homes. Is there any last minute tips for people about how you will now
Mm-hmm.
support two homes on this one source of income?
Yeah, it's uh, I think a lot of business owners get very comfortable to using their business in various ways. Sometimes they stretch on what's allowed through tax law on what they're doing. And they've built this lifestyle of um, not only stability, sometimes it's a lifestyle with a lot of comfort, and sometimes it's a lifestyle with a lot of luxury. And so when divorce comes in, one of the early pieces of this transition, if you're going to try to keep the business together, is the importance of making sure your books are really clean. Because if you start, the reason why you want to do this is if you start this new venture as business partners who are now unmarried, there's no proven track record there. There is a lot of things that could fall apart. So simultaneously, as you're trying to work your plan forward, you should also be working a contingency plan and remember the sweat equity that you both shared. So if you're a year or two down the road and it's just not working, you have to think about implementing your contingency plan. Well, if I was working with just a standard business and we were preparing for their succession, oftentimes business owners will work, 2, 3, I've seen them as far as 10 years in advance for their business succession, because the idea is that you want your business value to be as high as it can. Well, part of that is you have to have clean books. The other part is you have to have well-defined cross-training roles and responsibility of your staff, because you want to position the business so that it's very marketable to a future buyer if you decide that you have to put it up for sale. But if you're going through and you're bleeding the business for comfort and luxury, and you're not able to put a governor on that lifestyle, then you're just hurting yourself on the back end if your plan doesn't work as divorced business partners running a business.
Right. Yeah, so it's gonna be perhaps a big shift,
Hmm.
how you're gonna live, how your lifestyle will be funded, what's reasonable. But again, looking forward and thinking about not only the aspiration, but what ifs. What if
Hmm.
this doesn't work out with all the best intentions? What are we going
Right.
to do? And how to plan for that.
Right.
So,
And that dynamic exists before the divorce. It's always existed. They just may not have looked at it. So that exercise of revisiting this, they will discover ways to be better at their business that will make them more money. It's not a wasted investment at
right.
all. The divorce is here and presenting the challenge that says, now the challenge is here. We can go through and dive into the details, and line by line, how can we improve this business? They may not have even thought that way before.
Yeah, right. Because they didn't need to. It
Right.
was working. It was a status quo and it was okay.
Exactly.
I would imagine, you would recommend you mentioned working with a business coach during
Hmm.
this time and figuring out how to get out, working on the business instead of in the business. Do you also recommend that couples start, work with have a therapist on call to work through issues, or a coach, a coach
Yep.
that can help them?
Yeah. I mean, there's you find people that you trust and that are delivering value to your life. Um, Therapy is good. Sometimes it goes back into your life, and people need help right now getting their feet planted on the ground. That's the difference between coaching and therapy. Is coach is going to come in and give you tools to help you navigate the day to day. I call them rebound tools. And how do you book in your days? How do you start your day? How do you finish your day? But it's important to surround yourself with people that have experience with the overall transition. Now, if you're any business owner and you have some chance for some level of amicability, or what I call amitentiousness, meaning that you're contentious only about specific things. You're not the war of the roses that type of divorce that happened. Um, if you're any business owner and you have any level of amicability, it's very important to preempt the business strategy. Divorce is one of those unique things because it's a major transition that we don't plan for. All of the other major transitions we plan for. Divorce we don't plan for. But with a business, it's very important that you pre-plan it. It takes some level of effort up front, but it will save you so much time and energy and money on the back end if you do it the right way. So I often come in as a financial neutral, which means that the parties hire me and my allegiance is only to my recommendations. It's not to either of them. And I don't sell products, so I don't have any type of future interest in making sure that I'm maintaining a relationship so I can sell some financial product down the future. I try to be completely neutral in my engagements, but I believe that the financial neutral is a critical part to preemptively help them prepare for their divorce process.
I agree 100%. Whether you have a business or not,
Mhm.
financial professional is so important. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really enjoyed our conversation. And as you know, the last question I ask all my guests is if you have a better divorce tip. So what do you have for us today?
Well, since we're talking about business owners, the same thing that you might think you might face as a business owner, every business is going to have one, two, or a handful of key people. The key people often are used as pawns in a divorce, a contentious divorce, just as a business is used as a pawn, because the key person oftentimes is the breadwinner, and they have new demand or different demands from their work. So helping your key people navigate divorce is a very important step for you to manage the stealth risk impacting your business, and making sure that you can offer them some sort of service to help them through there. I think will be a very important investment in your bottom line, because it's not only the risk that you face as a business owner, but it's your key people. Um,
Oh, such a great point.
mhm,
Thank you. And you never think about that, like all the people supporting you and keeping this going and the stress that they're feeling knowing that you're divorcing.
right.
Uh, Great point. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, what is the best way for someone to find you and learn more about what you do?
Sure, sure. I mean, you can find me through my website. It's outreecoaching.com. That's youtree coaching.com. I also have a podcast titled A Man's Journey Through Divorce. It's a coaching podcast, just talking about general ways of helping people transition through divorce in a healthy way. So those two are the best ways.
Okay. Well, thank you. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe. This will help others who are seeking a better divorce to find us. This has been another episode of A Better Divorce podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.